write books for different reasons. Kylie Wilkie's is clear. She lost her husband Dave not long after their daughter Dylan was born. She's gone to great lengths to keep his memory alive, including writing a children's book about grief. It's called Memories Are Forever. Kylie, welcome to the studios. Firstly, can you tell us about Dave?
Sure. When I think about Dave, I just think that he was one of a kind. You know, he was the ultimate teammate, whether that was part of his home team, part of his sporting teams, or part of his work teams. You know, on the sporting field, he wasn't necessarily the most talented, but he tried harder than anyone out there, and he just loved the camaraderie and being part of the team, and he was really happy to warm the bench and help everyone else out from the sidelines. At work, he could rally small teams and big teams together for a common goal. And, you know, whether he worked in Australia or overseas where he couldn't speak the language, he just managed to get everyone on the same track working towards the same purpose. And at home, he just made everyone feel comfortable and feel safe.
Where did you meet?
We met in Kylie. So I lived in London for a couple of years. I moved there when I was 17, much to my parents' disgust. And I came back after my visa ran out after 2 years, and I moved to Kylie to fill 6 months between finishing in London and starting to study law. And I met Dave there. I worked at a pub with his brother and met through him, and the rest, they say, is history.
Can you take us back to those early days of parenthood?
Yes.
What was that like?
They were challenging because Dylan, our daughter, was born after quite a few rounds of IVF and other fertility treatment, and Dave was diagnosed with bowel cancer when I was 14 weeks pregnant. So our first days of parenthood were in the hospital, essentially. We'd had the baby, but then day 2 in hospital after having her, we trotted on down to chemotherapy, and we sat there while Dave had his treatment, and then we walked back up to the maternity ward. And so we had dual focuses at that time. Obviously, Dylan was a huge focus, but we also had to focus on Dave and his treatment, and she was a blessing. It was delightful to have her around and to have something else to focus on. We had a set up for Dylan at home, everything she could need. Then when Dave was in hospital, we would have one of everything at hospital. Then we had one of everything at my mum's house, so we could pick up and go wherever we needed to be without too much thought.
Did you know how long he had left to live at that point, or were you kind of just living day by day?
We were living day by day, and despite putting things in place for Dylan to remember her dad after he died, Dave didn't really ever acknowledge that that was probably going to be the end. But when I heard of his diagnosis, when I heard it was stage 4 metastatic bowel cancer that had already spread to his lymph nodes, look, I'm a novice. I don't know much about cancer. I didn't at the time, but I didn't think that sounded good, and it very quickly spread to his liver and lungs. So pragmatically, the pragmatic lawyer in me knew that it probably would take his life, but we didn't know how long. Doctors can only guess.
You said that you started taking steps to, I suppose, document what your time was like, what Dave was like before he passed. What did you do?
I did a couple of things. I asked Dave, as the days went on, about what his favourite things were. And not just the typical things, not his favourite colour, but I wanted to know what his favourite sandwich topping was, and if he liked his pillow hard or soft, and his shower water boiling hot like I like it, or, you know, a bit more tepid. And we recorded all of these things in a book for Dylan, favourite time of day. And so she has this book that records the strangest and most wonderful favourite things of her dad.
I'm sure she'll love that.
She will.
Because it's in those little things that you bond with your parents. You're like, oh, I'm like Dad because I do this. I'm like Mum because I do this.
Why do I like this on my sandwich? Your dad liked it. And that gives you a real sense of connection and belonging, and it builds a relationship with someone that you never really knew. And the other thing I did was we bought 30 birthday presents and 30 Christmas presents, and a present for every important stage of her life. And then Dave wrote cards to go with all of them. So each year we trot out these presents. Her birthday's just been, and so we have a present for her on her birthday, and then Christmas is around the corner, so she'll have a book for Christmas from him, and she's inherited his love of reading, which we couldn't have guessed. It's lucky that she has, and she has all these wonderful books waiting from her dad, along with a little snippet about why he loved that book.
Oh, that is incredible. That would have taken so much effort.
I'm a planner, and also that was something for me to focus on to make sure that if it did all go the way we suspected it would go, I had done everything I could do to make sure she was taken care of and everything was put in place so that she had these memories going forward.
That is so incredibly special. How does she react when she opens one of those gifts? It must be, there must be mixed feelings.
I think there is mixed feelings. She's only 7, and so in some of the years gone by, she sort of looked at them and gone, okay.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
You can't really show him the disappointment if you don't like it.
We were first-time parents, so for us to guess what would a 6-year-old like or what would this specific 6-year-old like was quite difficult.
Yeah, that's fair.
But she really looks forward to them every year and she can't wait.
Oh, it's so good. What was it like for you when he did pass?
It's hard to say, but for me initially I was relieved because he was so sick. And he wasn't the person that we all knew, and he wasn't the person that he was otherwise proud to be in his life. He was a really high-achieving person who prided himself on doing so many things and doing them at a really high level. And he had just got to the stage where he was in bed for a few days before he died, and he couldn't walk, and he was essentially comatose. And, that's no way to live. And it's no way to see someone that you love. And so while it's hard to say, I think we did feel a sense of relief that he was finally at peace. But then after that, it becomes a bit more tricky because then you have to go through the day by day and learn to live a different life again.
And look after a 6-month-old baby.
But, I'm lucky. I've got an amazing tribe that rallied around me, and my parents especially were amazing. And my daughter had her first sleepover with my mum and dad when she was 2 weeks old. And then they took her to New Zealand for a week when she was 6 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
Because we were all going on a family holiday.
Oh, what great grandparents.
They're amazing. But they thought we shouldn't have to travel with her because that was a stress on Dave that he wouldn't need. So if he became unwell, how would we care for both of them, or how would I care for both of them? So we happily sent her off and we joined them a week later. And in that intervening week, we had a little New Year's Eve gathering, nothing too exciting. And people were saying, "Where's Dylan?" And I said, "Well, she's in New Zealand." And that blew people's minds a little bit.
It would. It really
weren't quite sure what to make of it.
I also love when you have to get a little passport photo for a baby.
It was the most challenging thing. They said, we went to the pharmacy and they said, "Just lie her down on this chair." I said, "Good, she's 1 week old."
Oh, she doesn't have any neck support.
No, and also a 1 week old's eyes are very rarely open.
Yeah, that's right.
They're eating or sleeping.
And all the germs as well.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Great that you did it though, and these things only make them stronger. We haven't even touched on your book because it's been interesting to hear the background and what's led up to this point. Now, it's called Memories Are Forever. When did you start writing it?
I started writing it about 1.5 years ago, so it's been quite a process. I was working with a coach in a personal capacity because I think that there is real value and benefit from sharing our stories, especially stories that are really hard to tell or hard to hear. Because as we've discussed, these themes are common to all of us. Our stories aren't the same, but we've all experienced some kind of tragedy or loss, and we all like to be able to focus on the hope and the life and the love that comes out of it. And so I was working with a coach to work out how I could best share my story. And she said to me, "Can you please go away and write the synopsis for your book, as in a novel that might be about me?" And it threw me a bit and it wasn't really resonating with me. But I walked around the city for a few days and I had the first 2 lines of the book in my head. "As bright as our star, as blue as his shoes, I have my dad's eyes and he has mine too." And it just kept going around and around in my head, and I thought, there's something in this. I know that I'm biased and this is our story, but there's something in it. And so I went home and I said to Dylan, "Can you please tell me things that you know about your dad?" And I had a little list that I thought she might refer to, just a mental list. And she just told me all of these other wonderful things. And so I took her content and I turned it into, a lyrical children's book, and we went from there.
That would have been such a nice moment, though.
It was lovely. And then we really worked together as a team to make the book. And she initially had illustrated every page.
Ah, really? I didn't know that was her. These are her drawings.
So the end illustrations, unfortunately, aren't all hers because the publisher said that they've tried to do this kind of book before with children's illustrations and they won't necessarily work. And so we found a local illustrator who has been really sympathetic to her design, but also on every page you'll see there's almost like something stuck on, like a sticker.
Yeah.
That's her original. So we've taken that from the original first draft that we sent to publishers and we tried to set the scene on the first page by having Dylan on the cover, surrounded by pencils, holding up a picture of her dad. So that's her drawing. And then on every page...
Like the olives one, olives are yucky, we can both agree. Why people eat them, we simply can't see. And then in a bubble it says yuck.
Yuck.
And that must be her handwriting.
That's her handwriting.
Ah, that's beautiful.
And so she's drawn the star that they have named after them and she's drawn his blue shoes.
And I suppose what do you want to achieve from this book? I'm sure it's been a cathartic process for both of you. Do you want it to provide support to others who are going through the same thing, or?
There's so many things I want to achieve from this book. I want to start a conversation. I want people to read this book and understand that it's more than just our story. It's a story about tragedy, loss, love and hope. And I want them to be able to see their stories and their loss, whatever that might be, reflected in those pages and understand the importance that storytelling has in starting conversations, especially starting difficult conversations about things we might not otherwise talk about. And then I want them to pass it on. You know, recognise that these themes are common to our friends and our families and keep the conversation going. I want it to provide support to people who have experienced things, loss like Dylan or any other kind of loss or tragedy. And, you know, I want to have a tangible keepsake, a memento for Dylan where she can go and see herself reflected in her dad and be reminded every day that even though she doesn't really know him and never really met him, that her memories are forever and she's just like him.
And you know what else you're doing with this book? You're rallying people together.
Yes.
Like Dave did.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
See, I learned from the best.
You did. And the book is absolutely beautiful. I love the illustrations, but more importantly, the text, made me cry.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that.
So
I'm not pleased that I made you cry, but I'm pleased that it resonated with you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Kylie, thank you so much for giving up your morning to come into the studios.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I hope it goes really well.
Thanks very much.
Kylie Wilkie, Memories Are Forever. The book is out on Thursday. She's got a launch at Paperbird in Freo on the 15th of December and another on the 19th of December at the William Grant Memorial Library in Kalgoorlie as well. We're coming up on 3:30.